Hello, and welcome to the Garden of Grace devotion. My name is Pastor Katie, and I'm one of the pastors at Trinity Lutheran Church in Lilburn, Georgia. Today, the question that I have for you is, do you know that as a child of God, God can be at work in your life to bless others? Do you know? Do you believe that God can work through you, through your life, to bless others? To be human, I think, is to question that, to wonder, can God really use me? Can God really use the gifts that God has given me to bless others? Sometimes we can be more aware of our less than fabulous traits. Sometimes we can be more aware of our challenges and struggles than we are of the ways that God works through us. But today I have a story to share with you that is such a reminder of how really God can work through us in all kinds of ways. Ways that we may know about, ways that we may intentionally try to bless others. And also, God can be at work in and through us sometimes when we have absolutely no idea. I heard a story this weekend. I listened as a woman reflected on the life of her dad. She told many stories, but one of them in particular caught my attention. This woman ran cross country for the same coach that I did, but some years later. And she talked about how they had been away on a cross country trip and the coach got sick. I thought, interesting story to be telling as you reflect on your dad's life, but I listened further. She said, coach got sick. And then I got it from the coach. I mean, you travel on this bus, it's a lovely opportunity for germ sharing. So she said, I got this stomach bug from the coach. And then she said, and then I passed it on to my dad. And I thought, oh dear, goodness. She continued to talk. She said, and then he got so sick and dehydrated that he had to go to the hospital. But, she said, it turned out to be one of the best things that could have happened, because when he went to the hospital to get evaluated for dehydration, they discovered that sometime recently he'd had a heart attack. He had damage and things in his heart that needed to be addressed, which was only discovered because he went to the hospital because he needed IV fluids, because he got the stomach bug. In some ways, the stomach bug may have actually saved this man's life. So I sat there and listened. I thought, oh my goodness, how about that? So I called up my coach. I said, hey, do you remember when you got this wicked stomach bug? You were on some trip years ago, and you gave it to so-and-so. And he was like, I don't remember. I said, would you believe that this runner then passed it on to her dad? He went to the hospital because he needed IV fluids and discovered that he actually needed so much more. He went to the hospital for IV fluids and discovered that he needed open heart surgery, which he then had the following week. I said, you could have saved his life through passing on a stomach bug. And I can't remember exactly what my coach said, but something like, it's humbling. It's humbling to become aware of the ways that God can be at work in each of us that really don't have much of anything to do with our own strength, but have everything to do with who God is. God can be at work in and through our lives in so many ways, even through a stomach bug. Now, I can tell you that it would not be difficult for me to make a list of ways that my college cross-country coach has been used by God to bless the lives of others. However, until this past weekend, at no point would I have put on that list passing on a stomach bug. I share this story with you today because it is such a reminder to me of how truly, truly God can do so many things in and through each of us to bless the lives of others. I don't really tend to think that God gave my college coach this stomach bug so that he could then pass it along, but he had it. And he passed it along, and God was at work for good in the midst of it. And that, I think, is the piece to keep in mind. For God is at work in all things. I want to share this passage from Romans 8, which has been coming to me as I've thought about this for the last little while. It's Romans 8:28. For we know that all things work together for good, for those who love God, who are called according to God's purpose. I'm going to back up just a little bit, actually, to 26. Romans 8:26 through 28. Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know how to pray as we ought, but that very Spirit intercedes with sighs too deep for words. And God, who searches the heart, knows what is the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. We know that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to His purpose. May today we trust and believe that the Spirit is at work in and through us, sometimes in spite of us, sometimes through the gifts that God has given to us, sometimes apparently through a stomach bug. I pray that we may be open to God's leading us to bless others. I pray that we may be attuned to some of the ways that perhaps God works through us to bless the lives of others. And I pray God's peace for you today and always. Amen.